Hi.
So we're not in the van this week.
No.
So first, let's start, Kristen. Who are you and how can people find you on social media?
Okay, right off the bat. I'm Kristen Nagle, co-founder of Canadian Frontline Nurses. Canadian Frontline Nurses can be found on all social media platforms, www.canadianfrontlinenurses.ca. And then myself personally is Instagram, Telegram, Facebook, and it's at Kristen_Nagle. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I was made aware of you and the Frontline Nurses. Gosh, it feels like a long time ago by my friend Lorna, who was like, "Oh, you should speak to this lady." And I was really inspired by what you were doing. I think I'd walked to London at that point because we had a Zoom. Because I think it was like 3:00 my time or something like that. We'd had a Zoom, and I don't know. I guess I wanted what I saw you having. I wanted people alongside me. I wanted nurses who would, we'd all stand side by side and we'd all be doing this together. Because when I was walking, and I'm not suggesting that I was the only one. I'm not suggesting I was the first one. I'm certainly not suggesting I was the best one. But that was what I wanted to do. Get the nurses together and all fight it together. Like what I saw you doing. Mm-hmm. So I took a lot of inspiration from what you were doing. So would you like to tell people what it was that you did with the Canadian Frontline Nurses?
Mm-hmm. I just, first I want to just take a moment that I just think it's like really surreal that we're sitting here together right
so
now.
We're in Athens, by the way. We met about 2 hours ago.
Yeah, for the first time in person. So it's just, I just think it's amazing to actually be here in this moment and sitting across from you instead of Zooms or just Instagram or whatever else. And I'm just very happy in this moment to be able to meet you because you might have said that we inspired you, but you're an incredible inspiration to me and to us and everything that you have done. And I think it's amazing that we can continue to inspire each other whether we realize it or not. So I started speaking out right at the very beginning of 2020. I always knew that it was, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I call it a lie. So I started speaking out very publicly about it, realizing the harms it was having on communities, children specifically, small businesses. And then I held my first freedom rally in my hometown, London, Ontario, Canada.
See, I told everyone that you were in London.
Oh,
I was like, she was a nurse in London.
Yeah.
Is it neonates?
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, she's a nurse in London. And then she went back to Canada.
Yeah.
And now and I was like, oh no, there's a London in Canada.
Yeah.
No one fact checked me though.
Surprisingly.
Yeah.
So London, Ontario, Canada. And I guess I should add, before that, it's kind of crazy. I think we were kind of talking about this, to remember everything that's happened in the last little bit because it's been so much. But before I organized the Freedom Rally, I'd actually been suspended from work because colleagues knew that outside of work, I was advocating not wearing a mask, not social distancing, not isolating, being community, living your life, just in being surrounded by family. And I was going to other rallies nearby. So colleagues didn't like my outside of work behavior. And so they would write in complaints to management about me, about not wearing proper PPE. If I was sitting in the back, I would maybe pull the mask down a little bit, or goggles I would put on my head while I was charting or looking at the computer screen. And that ended up in the reports. I was shocked. I was like, they were so concerned about the goggles being on my head because I guess something's going to come out of my eyes. I don't know. So I was suspended from work, still carried on and hosted this Freedom Rally. And I knew that I would be under disciplinary action from work, but I was very naive at this point about what the media was going to do. I didn't take that into account. And the media wrote up this huge defamatory, slanderous article about, I never shared where I worked or what area of work I was in, but it was London, Ontario, LHSC, NICU nurse puts premature babies in danger. Because that's what I did. I was a neonatal intensive care nurse for 14 years. And then I got, reckless nurse and all these things, endangering lives. So you can imagine that was November 2020, how that would have been received in, my city and the community I was quite involved in. So very decisive. Is that the word I wanted? I don't think so.
We'll edit. We'll
whatever.
asterisk it. We'll beep it in.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, it just really tore the community apart. And then what I also didn't expect was the impact it was going to have on my family, with my name being so publicly out there. And maybe they, weren't on the same page, some of them, and it was very hurtful. They had a really hard time with seeing my name out there and all the hate comments attached to it. So I was then suspended indefinitely. My nursing license was put under investigation, and it was a really hard time because at that time I got to read all the reports and just see who was putting them in and all the comments. And I kind of went obviously inward and shut down, and I crumbled. Like I broke, I shattered into pieces all over. And I realized I had this choice where all this had happened. I'd come this far, and if I stopped now, then really it'd be all for nothing. So I kind of put myself back together. I knew there was another nurse that had already spoke out as well, Sarah Shajunian in Toronto, and I reached out to her, reached out to some American nurses I knew who had been speaking out, and we kind of started collaborating and wanting to do a global nurses summit where we could be like, okay, we're uniting. It's not just us two, we got nurses here. We'll all stand together on stage. So we started even hearing from nurses from UK, Sweden, and Australia, and a bunch of other places from around the world. And we formed Global Frontline Nurses. And we were going to host a summit in Tampa, Florida, where one of the nurse Erin Marie, she did the expose of Elmhurst Hospital. She was the undercover nurse. And I guess there was an opportunity to do it in Washington, D.C. It was going to be a bigger stage, bigger audience. And we thought, okay, great, more opportunity to get our message across. And us Canadians, kind of naive, at least I didn't really follow politics. I didn't pay attention, didn't really, know what was going on. But we spoke on this Health and Freedom stage with Del Bigtree helped organize it with the High Wire. There's Mickey Willis, David Martin, and just amazing people there. And it fell on January 6th, which was, a big day in DC. And so when Sarah and I flew home, we were deemed domestic terrorists that were there to take part in the rioting and storming of the Capitol. We're all MAGA. And we were both terminated immediately from our jobs. This time we were internationally defamed, just huge death threats and everything just for speaking. I was back at the hotel room when this happened. I didn't even know what was going on. RCMP came to our house, which is kind of equivalent to the FBI in the States, figure our involvement. And still to this day, there's some schools that are still teaching about me, about what not to do in nursing schools. Yeah. They have to write reports about, it's Kristen Nagle, a conspiracy theorist. And one person stood up and said she agreed with what I was doing, and she got kicked out of class. And this is just this past year. So it's been crazy. And then I guess Sarah and I, same thing. We just, we're terminated. We got to keep going. And I think this is when you saw us standing up, because we started kind of speaking more at rallies and events. We just kept going. And then we held a protest in front of the College of Nurses of Ontario, with a few other nurses that decided to join us. And we said, we're not going to let you bully us. Mm-hmm. We are here standing in ethics. We are here doing the right thing. We are here actually protecting the public, which you're saying you're doing and you're not. And you're not going to bully us into stopping or silencing us. So that's the first ever protest that's ever happened in front of a college like that, like a registering body. So it was pretty, I think a pretty massive statement. I think you that had seen that. And then, then I guess we just kept going, toured across Canada to speak. And then came, I guess it would have been September of 21? This past September? Yeah, 21.
Everything's kind of merged.
It's what is it? Yeah. They started kind of around the same time around the world. I know it happened in England as well, where they wanted to mandate the injections on healthcare workers for their jobs. So it was very lots of coercion happening. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to stand with the healthcare workers and support them. So we decided there was a nurse in British Columbia that was going to do it at one hospital, and we said, why not do it across Canada? It's happening everywhere. So we ended up organizing a national hospital rally across Canada on the same day at the same time. And so because of the time difference, it kind of went in this like wave across Canada. And it was some of the largest protests that had ever taken place. One of the events, I think 10,000 people came out, which is massive numbers for our events in Canada. And we were under the most attack we had ever been under, even more than Washington, D.C. And I was done. But I got this encouraging call from a doctor from Saskatchewan, and he said, that was brilliant. It was a targeted, event. We have to keep going. This is, we're, getting the attention. That's why the media is coming out so hard because, we're getting this truth out, this message. We have to do it again. And I was like, okay. It was kind of, the media was so bad. They said that we interfered with ambulance access to emergency, we stopped cancer treatments from happening, and we assaulted healthcare workers. And it was those three things that happened all across Canada. Those exact same three things, apparently, that happened at every event across Canada. So just very scripted.
So what were those three things again?
That we stopped ambulance access
Yeah.
for emergency, that we interfered with cancer treatments specifically, and that we assaulted healthcare workers.
But I think the irony of that is with all of these restrictions in place, cancer treatment was withheld.
Yes.
Ambulances were diverted or had to queue longer, or I don't know about in Canada, but certainly they had to go through more like testing and masking and PPE. So there was delays. There was people that were shielding. So there was fewer staff members. And what was the last one? Sorry, the ambulances.
Oh, and then we assaulted the healthcare workers. Yeah.
And again, so you assaulted the healthcare workers. However, to coerce somebody into having a medical intervention that they don't want nor need is not assault. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know about you, but I feel like I have been gaslit my entire life.
Absolutely.
Because they're the things that were happening, not as a result of you holding these rallies and trying to talk and trying to get people to ask questions. And as you've said, in my eyes, that's what nurses should be doing. That's what nurses should be doing. They should be standing up for our code of ethics. And what is it like where you are? So we've got the NMC, the Nurse Midwifery Council, that we have to be registered with. Mm-hmm. And then we've got like unions. So one of them might be like the Royal College of Nursing. So do you have somewhere where you register and then a union, or is that different?
Yeah, no, same thing. College, well, because I'm in Ontario, College of Nurses of Ontario, and then Ontario Nurses Association. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have that as well. So going right back, because one of the first things you were saying about that you were a danger and you had the goggles and things, what was the feedback from the family members? Because at that time, when you're there to support them, I've never been in that situation, but I can imagine the distress that family members must have felt. So did the family members say that they felt in danger because of you putting your goggles on?
No.
On your head?
No. And then whenever I was like with the family, with my patients in the space, like it was always proper how we're supposed to, proper PPE, and that was never a conversation. Those poor parents, though, you can imagine the stress of having a premature baby. So we worked with micro-prems like 23 weeks and up. And at that time, parents had to wear a mask while holding their babies here. And also only one parent was allowed at the bedside within 24 hours. So the stress that they were feeling, and only one of them alone, and, without their partner to support them, or, it's so much information they're trying to obtain, and they're doing this all alone. And there were some that wouldn't even see their own children if they had other kids at home. It was just so awful to see what was happening. And then if they're in antenatal care, high risk pregnancy, sometimes they could be there for like weeks, if not months alone. They could only have the one person come in, that same person the whole time. And I just can't imagine the extra stress this put on. And I remember C-sections, I couldn't wrap my head around it. There would be 8 or so medical staff in the room, but the father of the baby or the partner was not one of them. He was not allowed in there. And
Were the babies passed to the mum's skin on skin, or
no, normally like the NICU nurse would go in and catch the baby from the doctors. We'd show mom and then clean baby up. Dad would come and take the baby right to mom. But because we couldn't even do this handoff anymore, we had to stay like out of the room, and then baby was placed on just like cold cot, like right away, just without being, held, and then kind of pushed out, like wheeled out a little bit to us where we could finally grab the baby, because apparently we couldn't interact with one another, even though we were all sterile and did all the, scrubbing in. And I remember thinking too, if mom, which sometimes happened, had to go under general anesthetic, both parents missed the birth of the baby, because it's just, I know we kind of talked about this too, people, you're not a real nurse, and I would get, well, you're not a frontline nurse. And
frontline nurse, I forgot that. Yeah. Nurse.
Well, you're not even on the front lines, but it's like, no, but you can still see harms happening.
And also sometimes being not emotionally involved there and having that distance. Because so I'll always say to my husband, like, people only have a certain amount of reactions and responses. It doesn't matter if you are in the playground or in a government office. Like, you're going to get certain characters, you're going to get certain behaviours. So, yeah, do you know what? I haven't worked in that environment, but I bet I've met a lot of the characters during my career. And I think that just by having that distance where you're not in it and you're not caught up in it, you do get a different perspective than other people. And the reason why I asked about if it was in plastic, because there was... it was like an art exhibition of COVID in Trafalgar Square. And I remember two in particular that kind of got to me. One was an elderly lady who was in her house, and then there was like a toddler, like hand up to the glass, like kissing the glass. And then the other one was a lady having a baby, and they like handed the baby, like, I don't know how this was it was like a plastic bag, and they passed it to the mum, and it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What that to me was just so tragic. And then it was in Trafalgar Square, well, just the side of Trafalgar Square, as art and something to be like celebrated.
Yeah. And this is what it was. I thought maybe it was like to try and bring awareness to like what was happening.
It was awful. So none of the family members kind of felt scared around you. And you were seeing...
Not till after.
Not till
after the media told them to be. And then the phone was off the hook. I think she took care of my baby. I think, was she in there when my baby was in there? And, all these things. Then all the fears and worries came out about me working in the unit when their baby might have been in there, or that I was their nurse at one time. But until the media said something, like, no, I've always had really good relationships with all my family members and patients, yeah.
And it's so interesting. Like, I'm struggling with people not being able to use their own judgment and not being able to use their own lived experience. So let's just suggest that these family members, up until they saw that media report, were very happy. They were at home, they were content, they'd got the baby, everything was fine. They'd almost forgot about you. Then they see this, and then they make the complaint, or they make the phone calls, or they start to get scared. But before that, they were okay.
Yeah.
And I find it really difficult that, with all the fear in the media, that people weren't looking at their lived experience. So we're told that all these bodies are going to be like dropping down in the street. How many have you seen?
Yeah.
None. But it was like people's perception and judgment they just couldn't comprehend this information. So people then started to phone up and started to make the complaints worse. So another thing that you said was about January 6th and then returning home and then being doxxed. So we had this, me and my husband, where people had got our, I mean, it's not that difficult to find, got our information. I'm a little bit more wary now about what information I put or where my information is, and then put it on Twitter. And apparently that wasn't against the Twitter guidelines. It took us a lot of time and effort and stress. Like, we were so stressed to get this removed. Like, we didn't know if people were going to like come up with a ton of like cow manure and put it on our drive or like smash the windows, or we didn't know what was going to happen. Or if now people know where I live, and you say it out loud now and people think you're just being paranoid or you're just being ridiculous. But when it was like the real thick of it, like, it really felt like that might happen. So that was our experience of doxing. It was very difficult to get that information off Twitter. It did come off, and nothing happened, but it did cause a lot of distress. What was your experience of that?
Yeah. Well, the same thing. And I have to say, like, January 6th was bad, but it was the hospital events that were worse.
Right.
Because they got to the heartstrings of people. And, we affected cancer treatments. We stopped the ambulance from getting to emergency. So people said that, that we had blood on our hands, that we were like literally causing death and harm to happen. So you can imagine people wanting to avenge that, really. And lots of like written things said and those sentiments. So we were like doxxed at that time, where people showed all our addresses. They're like, let's go and have a protest in front of their house from 9 to 9, banging pots, whatever they wanted to do. So it was like having the information out there and then being, vilified as almost murderers. It was, it was scary, because I'm like, oh, this is what's going to actually tip people over the edge to do something. And it does. You get a little bit paranoid. You're not sure if you're overreacting. Is there something we should do? And but it's a lot of, like, we call it like the keyboard warriors. No one showed up, nothing happened, and everything has been okay. But it does create a lot of stress and fear and anxiety for sure. Not sure what to think of it.
And you can see why. So people, when I was walking, people would get mad at me for other nurses not doing stuff. And then nurses who were doing whatever their message was would get mad at me for not doing the same as them. So it's a real thankless task to speak out. And, the people that would shout at me in the street, I'd have to ask them, like, why do you think I'm doing this? Like, I don't have anything to earn from doing this. There's nothing that I'm going to get from doing this except for like a clear conscience. And I think that was really quite frustrating, where I was almost attacked from the people who were like on my side, and also people who like just did not understand what I was doing at all. Did you get much support from your colleagues, like behind the scenes on the quiet, or was it just, no, you're dangerous and that's that?
Like my personal colleagues, there was maybe like 3, 4. But I knew who they were at the very beginning of all this, and they had stayed the same. But
and was that like messages, like
in
not
person,
secret messages, but like personal messages,
in person conversations, and we knew each other's stance and where we stood. They stayed in work until the mandates came, and then they were terminated at that point. But no one else has really kind of come around. But we did what the media did do in our benefit was it showed people where to find us. So we did get a ton of support across Canada that reached out and found us, and just kind of validated that we were doing the right thing, and that we did have all this support behind us. So that was really nice and reassuring. And you have to kind of struggle with like, well, if you speak out too, we could be out of this. If like everyone that's showing their support, if you kind of, voiced your concerns as well, like this would, be huge.
And it's hard because you understand why they don't.
Yes.
They've got mortgages, they've got jobs, they've got family, like they've got bills to pay. Like you understand why, but just come on.
Yes. But that's that struggle, right? Because, you get it and you're sympathetic and you understand, but you have that little bit of like, but I wish it would just help all of us. But I think there's a journey, time, and place that we're all supposed to be on. And I think, we need the good ones still working inside. 'Cause
Yeah,
someone
you don't
needs
want
to
them all to
still
get
be in
sacked.
there and protecting people.
Yeah, you don't want them all to get sacked. So we met online, which is where I've met most of my friends now, like the
Yeah.
people that I speak to, and we describe it as like a value-based friendship. So although we might have disagreements, or we might have completely different like careers or locations, we share the same values, and I really really like that. So yeah, we've just met in Athens a couple of hours ago, and we're going to film this podcast probably in 2 parts. We might need to cut it up, chop it up a little bit. So that's where you've come from. What's Canada like today?
Yeah, well, it went through a lot, and just recapping a little bit. So after the hospital protests, it is now a federal criminal offense to protest in front of hospitals because of that. So that was kind of like crazy how big those demonstrations got. We had the Ottawa Convoy, which was amazing until it wasn't. And so where is Canada at now? Right now, there's still the mandates on jobs. Nurses are still not allowed to work. We are in very much, which sounds like the same kind of around the world, in a healthcare crisis, a very severe one. They're talking about this, but they're not talking about the nurses who have been terminated. There is a massive influx of foreign workers coming in. Our college, our registering body is almost kind of boasting about the high numbers of foreign nurses coming in, while our experienced, skilled, competent nurses sit at home. So there's still like those mandates in place.
And also the culture as well, like
It's very different.
because
Yeah.
we can have nurses who are from a different background, and sometimes they can come across quite abrupt in their communication, but then they're not. Like,
Yes.
they're lovely, but sometimes the patient's going to feel like they're being quite abrupt, so then they don't want to ask them for something. So I think, yes, it's great and it should be celebrated that there is that diversity, but we also don't want to be solving one problem and creating other problems.
Yes.
And I think that if to have such a massive influx when you've got your own nurses as well who are willing, able, experienced, that can create other problems.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And we've definitely heard from nurses that are struggling with the dynamic. And it's just like even language barriers and things like that. It's been very difficult while their colleagues are sit at home. That's the other frustrating thing. It's like, when are the ones that stayed and who believe going to fight for their colleagues? But hopefully soon. Canada right now, to me, feels, open, which I think a lot of us are experiencing around the world right now, as they're given, a little bit of freedoms now. It's, to kind of blow off that steam and kind of feel like we're living normally. But I was explaining to you earlier, we can leave our country now. Before we weren't able to. Now we can fly out, go on trains and travel, but we still can't get back in without quarantining, tests, showing our status, and then the ArriveCan app, which is like the tracking app. So those that don't, you are allowed back in Canada as a Canadian citizen, but there are threats and intimidation and massive fines for going back to your home. $6,000, $10,000. Some have received. Yeah.
And how is that coming out? Like, is that coming out of people's wages or?
No, so it's just at this time a ticket, like a fine.
Okay.
And people are saying, I will take this to court. The interesting thing is, the courts are so behind, are so backed up. I haven't heard yet of any of these going into the courts or anything happening of them. But interesting enough, there was a nurse at the beginning that didn't follow some of these restrictions entering back into Canada. And she clicked, or checked, I'm going to take this to court. And since they're so backed up, I think they're trying to find ways to threaten people, new ways. So they told her that she's not allowed to renew her driver's license until this is paid. But it doesn't work that way because, if we're following a legal system, it's like, no, it has to go through the courts. You can't just turn it over to something else and threaten. So it's kind of just like that sign of what, like, social credit system to come. I don't know. So that's kind of interesting. But right now, things are open. Things feel good. And I think that anticipation of, I don't know, what's
What's around the
next
corner.
and what's, is it going to happen again or, yeah.
Yeah, and I said, like, I don't want to live my life like I'm always thinking, what next? Or, oh, they've done this, what does that mean? Like, I think there's a fine line between, like, paranoia and preparedness. And I know that I'm certainly just getting on with how I was before, trying to do the best that I can to help other people in different ways. But yes, it certainly feels more open where we are. I don't think in England there's any restrictions. Few people wear masks. Certainly no one's shouting or punching anyone for not wearing a mask. And there was a time, and again, we've talked about our memory and how, like, we've had so much information, like, we just can't, like, compute everything. But it's interesting how some people have forgot how they behaved. And some people in supermarkets, gosh, I remember I couldn't even go to a supermarket. Rob had to do all the shopping for us because people were just so horrible and just so tense and so aggressive. And it really feels like I've seen the best and the worst in people in the
Yes.
last couple of years.
Absolutely.
What's been your best and worst bits?
I think a lot of the worst kind of already discussed, like just the media defamation, losing relationships within the community, within family, that whole divide, and just my messaging at the beginning was just about, like, I mean, it still always is. It's just about actual health. Like, if this is about our health, why aren't we talking about it? What are things you can do? Because about 7 years ago, I went back to school to become a holistic nutritionist, and that's my passion, is helping people through, nutrition and lifestyle and, mental health and well-being. And it's like, why is this not being talked about? So I would talk about vitamins and real food and sunshine, and then I was like labeled this like crazy person. I'm like, but just talking about solutions that are not heard. So that's all really tough. But the amazing thing is just the connections. Like, how are we sitting here together right now, in Athens? We would have never have met. I just came from a conference in Vienna with people from around the globe. I've made, lifelong friendships, and I have seen, like you said, the worst and the best in people. But the best has been, like, just incredible. Like, really just people pouring their hearts out, like giving all of themselves, like showing up to help their community. And it has been truly inspiring and beautiful to see the connections and supports that have been that have come from this. And that's what I think, we were kind of on the same page before. It's like, yes, we, had to speak up and talk about and everything that was going on at the beginning. But I think there comes a point where we do need to figure out how we're going to continue living, because we don't want to live in that place of fear of what's next and this, and because we just want to live. So I think we're kind of like, let's take the best of the humanity and the beauty that we've seen the last, couple of years, and it's time to take that and find solutions to move forward so we can continue to hold on to that and actually create this future and world we want to live in.
Yeah, and I think with what you're saying about people helping in communities, so we had the banging the pots and pans at Thursday at 8:00 for the nurses, for the Frontline Heroes. And then, everyone was like, be kind and help out, like, your neighbours and things. And that was all very much at the beginning. And what I found was, I don't know, I think you can see the difference between someone who authentically is that character and someone who is just keeping it up for a little bit. It's a bit of a novelty.
Yes.
And then people started to get really frustrated. And then I don't know whether that was kind of like the switch at the supermarkets when you saw people how, they were taking like extra food and extra bloody toilet rolls. And I don't know, it seemed to be like people were quite happy to go along and help, and, everyone was smiling, and there was definitely a novelty around, like, the lockdowns and things. But when that isn't your authentic character, you can't keep it up for long periods of time. And I think that the friendships that have been formed now, like, these people are doing it, and they're still doing it, and they did it before all of this happened as well. So yeah, that's something that I'm definitely taking as well. The connections were amazing, when I was walking and things. And as difficult and painful as the aggression, like face-to-face, online, and people that I would consider like that I thought were friends that I made along the way, it was all, that was always uncomfortable, like the aggression and the attacks and things. But what I would think about is, what if I don't do anything? That would be more uncomfortable if I don't do anything and all of the mandates or the vaccine passports come through, the social credit system and things like that. So I definitely want to go down kicking and screaming before I stop.
And I just I felt, and I know you felt this too, I think with my kids, I just was like, this is not the world I brought you into. This is not the life that, I wanted you to have. So it was kind of like standing up for them, and parents were messaging me about things were happening to their kids. And I know you were getting kind of messages or stories when you first did your walk, and it's like, well, how am I supposed to take all those in, hear them, and, have them weigh on me and not do something with them? Obviously they entrusted me with this, and if I do nothing, I would just feel like I'd be just doing such a disservice, letting them all down. And I know all the stories that you heard along the way, and it's it was almost this responsibility that we took on without meaning to, whether we wanted to or not. But it became almost this this call, to do something.
So I want to talk about your husband.
Yeah.
And so how did it go from you two having conversations to you two then doing something? And how did that impact your relationship?
It so at the very beginning, we both agreed that we weren't buying into it. It didn't make sense. He believed that it was just something that the political world was using to their advantage. I had gone a little bit, I guess, deeper into what was happening. So he kind of stayed down here. We're both on the same page that what was happening was not right. But he kind of stayed here, and I just went, just taking in, consumed. And I think a lot of us, there was a period where we were just consumed with taking in information and learning. And it put me kind of in a fear place for a while, and scared or angry, upset, all these emotions. And it was very difficult on our relationship for a bit, because I kept wanting to kind of, oh, we need to prepare, we need to do this, or thinking, worse things were coming, and he was not there. And it took me a little bit to kind of come back to a balance. I think a lot of us, there was this phase of over consuming and then having to kind of back off and trust a little bit more. And so there was definitely a struggle at the beginning. We didn't plan anything. It was kind of a joke now, because actually after my second child, I didn't want to go back to work. It was already kind of hurting my soul, what I was seeing and experiencing, and I wanted to do something more proactive in the nutrition, the holistic world. But I didn't have a plan, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just kind of trust that it would have worked out. But that, wasn't really the answer that my husband wanted to hear. So went back kind of to the secure, paycheck, the pension, and all the good things. And it just, he knew I'm a very vocal person. And so he knew I was speaking out about this. And, but I don't think we knew the repercussions that were going to come with that first media. So it was okay, well, it happened. Now what? So luckily he has always been incredibly supportive, and he has been on the same page, and we've just kind of dealt, I guess, with everything one step at a time. So the joke became I guess I should have quit before I had my chance, instead of having to go out in a blaze of fire. And then it was kind of interesting because, coming from the man who wanted, a plan, when it came to him to do all these testing and, these restrictions on his job, he said no, with no plan. Yeah, I was very impressed when it came up for my husband to take a stand. He did, with his job. So, kind of quick, he's a high school teacher, and when all the schools shut down, he was working from home, doing online remote teaching, and he did that for a year and a half. Then the following year, they wanted all remote teachers to report to a classroom. His just so happened to be an hour away, and the classroom was going to be with 2 to 4 other remote teachers in the same room. So very distracting. And then, they had to wear mask in the classroom while teaching to his computer screen, and then test 3 times a week, because he was entering a classroom to teach to a computer screen. And it just didn't make sense, that he'd have to do that while he had just worked from home for a year and a half. So he said no to this without a plan, and which was just kind of ironic because, I didn't have a plan, but I had to keep going to work. And but he made it work, and I was just very proud of him that the creativity, the resiliency, and we had downsized our house the previous year, so that kind of took the financial pressure off of me not working and him being able to figure it out. And it is actually amazing what you can do if you're willing to find opportunities. So really, he had a truck. He put up on Facebook, your friend with a truck. And it was like whatever people needed, like moving jobs, lawn care, hanging Christmas lights. And interesting enough, he found the big, his like income with flipping couches.
Okay.
And all that meant was people wanted couches out of their house. They had a new one being delivered. So it was either like, please take this out for free or $50. He would take it and put it up for sale, not do anything to it, but just sell it for more. And it's, and people would buy it. It's usually like 200 or more like profit per couch if you're, so there's like so many opportunities out there. And I just know that it became hard to hear. And I'm sure this for you as well. Like, when you hear, I don't have a choice, and it's like, well, we all have a choice. And I don't like that statement of I don't have a choice, because it's like, well, you could choose to find something else, or you could say, I chose to stay in the career that I love, but just know that it's a choice that you're making. Anyways, but you asked about Chris. Has been incredibly.
Just interrupt you there.
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
So one of the things was
Thanks.
changing it to that's not a priority for me.
Yes.
So let's just say, I go to the gym. However, if I gained loads of weight, I could say, I haven't got time to go to the gym. I haven't got this. I haven't got that. And actually, if I say going to the gym is not a priority for me, that puts it on me, and that makes me feel very uncomfortable. But if I blame everything else, I haven't got the time, I haven't got the money, I haven't got the energy, I haven't got the trainers, blah, blah, blah. But when you turn it to, it's not a priority. And with choice as well, there's needs and wants. So you might want a bigger house, but do you need a bigger house? And I think sometimes people go for the things they want rather than what they need.
I think we were very blessed. We had the opportunity to travel in 2019 before all this. So I was on maternity leave for the summer. Chris, being a teacher, he had the summer off, and it's like, well, we should do something with this opportunity that we've been given with 8 weeks off. So we found this tin can of a trailer, like it called the Golden Falcon. It's like so old. We kind of gutted it and just made it kind of more that would be functional for our family. Nothing fancy, like literally like plywood, no bathroom, like no amenities. But it fit us and did everything we needed. So we took that all the way across Canada and back for 8 weeks, and we just lived in this tiny tin can for the summer and just loved it. We were just all together. We were outside. We were doing all these things, and I was like, this is all that we need. So we came back to our kind of bigger house. It just felt too big, and it was this good, amazing lesson of, well, this is the happiest we've all been in a very long time. Being together, doing the things we love, and this house is actually preventing us from doing that because the house poor, all the money that it takes, all the things. And it's like, well, if this is actually what we love, then like, let's make it a reality. So that's kind of what spurred the downsizing of the house, was just trying to create a lifestyle that we wanted. And just luckily, divine intervention. I believe in God, whatever others believe in. It was just kind of like, I think, leading us that way, because had I lost my job still in that house, we would not have been in a good place. So it was just amazing, the life lessons that kind of led us here to be kind of like, okay, we actually are comfortable enough to continue to stand our ground and be convicted and stand in our beliefs and values and keep living that way. And then, I've been able to homeschool our boys, like, so they're home with us, so I don't have to worry about them, like, going through any of this stuff at school. And I don't know, it's been fascinating. As hard as a lot of the challenges have been, I have found it such a blessing, the path that it has pushed me towards. Because I think every challenge and obstacle that's come, it's kind of just trying to redirect me into the life that I should be living or want to be living, or that I've, or who we actually are. And I think it goes back to kind of the questions you were saying, like, it's not a priority, or I do have a choice. And it's kind of just reflecting on, well, what is the life you want to live like, and what does that look like? And we can all make that happen.
Yeah, and I've been, so we've been, we went to Iceland. As soon as Iceland opened up, we went to Iceland. As soon as Greece said that it was opening up, we booked the flights. And, me and Rob are traveling around, and we've never been big on kind of social media or like attached to our phones anyway. But now we are much more conscious of the time that we spend. And we both said in the lift about not having our notifications on, so we're not kind of like constantly connected to our phone. And it's really making me sad. It's always made me sad seeing couples in restaurants and they're both there and they're just on their phone. But now I'm paying more attention, and I'm seeing people live their holidays through their phones, and they're just like on their phone, just walking around and not really paying attention to the people that they're with. And seeing like, and this is really judgmental, but like seeing like the clothing that they're wearing and the brands, and knowing how expensive all these clothes are, or how expensive all their watches and jewelry is, and things like that. Now, I don't know what their income is. I'm kind of making assumptions here that people are living for other people and buying these things maybe to fill a void. And it makes me feel really sad, really, really sad, because me and Rob have just like streamlined our life, like right down. Like, we're very happy, we're very content, we've got everything that we need. We don't need anything. And to see people like struggling or having to work overtime for all these extra things that just aren't essential, it makes me sad.
I think it is sad. I remember at a young age kind of wondering this and being confused by it. It's like, okay, well, we have to go to school all day, at like 5. Then you go to the next school, you go to high school, then another school, then you get into a job. And you're just like busy, like full days of like in these institutions, whatever you want to call them, waiting until you retire, if you make it that far, and you've missed out on actual like life and living. And I just remember being confused. I was like, I just feel like there's more than what we're being told to do. And I feel like that's what the last 2.5 years specifically has really shown me, like, because for a lot of us, it has just like ripped us right down, like to complete vulnerability, broken all the chains that we might have been attached to, like taking jobs, homes and whatever, and just left us with like, well, what is important?
Family, you were talking about the families being torn apart.
Yeah, and even families have been torn apart. And I think it brings you into this vulnerable state of really kind of analyzing and like what is important to you, like what is important of this world. And I think it's kind of a gift to be kind of like ripped. I'm probably not saying that right, but I think it is a gift of having these chains cut, to kind of really evaluate like this path that we had been on and told to live. And now we get to kind of stop and just completely change direction. as Robert Frost, the road less traveled. We don't know what that looks like, but I think it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I just couldn't imagine going back to that materialistic. And I don't think I ever was big on it anyway. But now I think I'm definitely more conscious about where I spend my money and what I want to spend it on. And again, I don't want to be living thinking like, oh, what's around the corner, what might happen. But I also kind of am a little bit.
I think
just a little bit. So what was Canada like when it was in the thick of it? So for us, we had all sorts of rules that were like, you can do this, you can't do that. I was saying about, I think it was hairdressers had to wear masks, but the clients didn't. But then you couldn't go and see your doctor, but the doctor could go to the hairdresser. Mm-hmm. And there was all ridiculous rules like that. And they seemed to change very quickly. And I almost think that was part of the, like, just spin people around. Just keep on spinning them and they'll be confused enough that they just won't know which direction they're going in. There was, so like counties would have different tiers. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And that would depend what restrictions you had. So we were in tier 3. So our pubs, restaurants weren't open. But just across the invisible border, like 10 minutes away, they were all open. So we'd like cross the border. Yeah. And then we'd have to lie about where we were from. And I remember we went with friends and we'd say that we all lived in the same house. Like, it was so ridiculous. Like, nobody believed us.
Like when it was a bubble?
Yeah, bubbles. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's the problem with the bubbles is everyone had so many bubbles.
Yes.
And then I remember we'd have some like tradesmen round and it's like, oh, it's all right, we're in the same bubble. And then another person would, oh yeah, we're in the same bubble. And it's like, oh, if you actually did, not a family tree, but like a map of all these bubbles, you're just living,
a bubble tree.
Yeah, you're just living your normal life. So yeah, ours was, things were happening quite fast. The media was really putting a lot of pressure on people to be isolated from, and, to be told that they were conspiracy theories, that they were dangerous. When the media is funded by a lot of people who are going to benefit from the sales of these products. So, yeah, it felt really, really tense. And there was a time where I remember Rob saying, in 2 years' time, we'll do this, or in 2 years' time, this will happen, or whatever he said. And I just had a black void. I couldn't even, and it made me anxious, him thinking about 2 years' time, because I couldn't think about next week.
Yeah.
So yeah, when it was like really, really in the thick, it felt quite dangerous. It felt very risky to have different views, a different perspective, and to be challenging the status quo. I don't think there was anything that I couldn't do though. Like, we weren't stopped from going on trains or in restaurants. Like, they did introduce the vaccine passports and things, but I don't believe there was anything apart from air travel that we weren't able to do. What was Canada like?
Went through, I'd say, like 2 different hard phases. Like in our one lockdown, I don't remember first, second, or whatever. Might have been the second one. It went down to like you couldn't leave your house. Like it was like essential outings only. And during that time, I think I racked up like 11 summons for speaking at public events. And I was like, oh yeah, we weren't allowed to leave our house. I remember there was like a mom ended up in the news because she was trying to drop one of her children's off at, her mom's like the grandma's house so she could do like shopping and stuff without the kids. And because she went to the grandma's house first. Anyway, she ended up like getting charged or something ridiculous. But yeah, so we were not allowed to leave our houses. It was that whole thing of like no Christmas, no Thanksgiving, or if you're having Christmas in Canada, it's like minus like 20. It's like eat outside or something.
Oh no.
I don't know. I can't really remember. I just remember they were so silly. But I do remember it was supposed to be canceled. Like, I think it was just like, no, it's just off the table. When the passports did come into play, that was no restaurants for anyone. It was no restaurants, like eating inside. That was transportation, so no train, air, or anything like that. So we were there was a lot that we were restricted from. Then the job losses. But I think we are so thankful that we had created such a community, and there's some businesses that we knew, where we could still feel like, we're getting our coffee or getting something or supporting these businesses trying to stay open. But there was a period where we were like, could not leave even like we couldn't travel within Canada. Like we couldn't even travel within our own country, to hop on any plane or train. Like we were just kind of like stuck where we were. Mm-hmm.
Looking back, it didn't feel like it was ever going to end.
Mm-hmm.
It only felt like it was going to get worse and worse and worse. So with the relationships that had been broken down with your family, have they been rebuilt? Do you think they will be rebuilt?
They have not, and I don't know. It's hard to know. There has been, some that have come around, but yeah, there's still very much a divide and brokenness. That it's almost, I think with some it's almost so deep, they don't even know how to like reconcile or come around because you're on two such massive spectrums. I've noticed some just want to continue to dig their heels in. Because I think if they kind of start to kind of want to, not even like just to reconnect, there has to be some kind of admitting that there was something not right or something was wrong or they have to second guess. I think there's so many people that want to just continue to dig their heels in or believe everything they did was right because it's so much to take in, to admit that you could have been wrong or they were wrong. And then there was like some deception that fell into. And I think that is too much for a lot of people because that could unravel so much of their values and beliefs.
Oh, yeah. It's like everything that you believed, everything that you've told yourself.
Yeah.
And the life that you've been leading all this time. And I didn't fall out with anyone in particular. Like, I didn't have an argument with anyone. But there was one friend where we just kind of stopped talking. And then there's like unfollowed on social media and things like that. So that happened. And then the other friend who, I say, we didn't have an argument, but she didn't want me to talk about stuff. She was able to tell me her fears, but I wasn't able to tell her mine. And I thought I could do that. I thought, okay, Jen, like, just turn the volume down. And I just couldn't. And I thought, like, how can we be in a friendship if I can't share my fears with you and you can't, like, offer some reassurances for me or at least listen?
Or just listen.
At least listen. But you can vent and say whatever you want to me. So, like, with the censorship, I didn't want the censorship to be within friendships as well. So, yeah, there was no kind of fallouts, but, like, drifting apart and difficulties there. But for some people, like, I think we're really lucky where, like, we did get on with our partners. And a lot of people were in those situations where they couldn't leave. Well, they could leave. They could have left their house. Yeah. But the fear was so strong of the consequences that for the people who had maybe difficult relationships before and then difficult relationships because they saw things differently, some of the stories that, people have said to me, there's one lady that always sticks in my mind where she got alopecia and she was like living downstairs and her husband was living upstairs and they couldn't be in the same room. They just could not have a conversation without it turning into an argument because their views were so different. And I think that what we were seeing in the media of Canada during, I guess for me, it felt like the peak for me because everyone was talking about it. And we definitely can't have this conversation without talking about the truckers.
Yeah, of course.
Honestly, I remember watching that and I remember like I was crying and I was like, how can I get there? How can I get there? Because there was one time in Durham where I was walking and I was by the side of the road and people were beeping and it was so addictive. It was so addictive.
Yeah.
I was with this group of people and I was like, just 2 more beeps, just 2 more beeps. Now, honestly, I don't know whether they were beeping at me like in support or like, I think you can kind of tell the supportive ones and they're not. But I was like, just 2 more beeps. And then I was like, just 3 more beeps. And I don't know what it is about people beeping their horns. But then I remember seeing the truckers and it just seemed like everyone came out. Everyone was out for support. Everyone was out like with the food. And I remember looking to see whether I could get to you. And I was like, can I go to Mexico? And drive up? And oh my gosh, I just wanted to be there so much. And yeah, tell us, describe us, the truckers.
That was just such an incredible experience. I remember kind of hearing something about like there was this trucker movement, but I wasn't hearing a lot of it, so I wasn't really understanding like what was going on. There just so happened to be one of the worldwide rally days happening. It was January 22nd, and there was a trucker, and he was like, okay, tomorrow is the first day. We're going to Windsor, which is a bordering city with the U.S., and he was kind of explaining about it. And so afterwards, I was like, oh, I didn't realize you were, a trucker. So can you explain more to me? Like, what is happening? What's with like, this first little rollout? Then there's this. And he said, well, first we're going to go to the neighboring U.S. cities because the West has to come in. And the West is going to take like several days to get here. So as they're coming in, we're just going to do kind of slow rolls around the borders. And then we're all meeting up on January 27th or 28th, whatever it was, in Ottawa. And I was like, okay. So I go home and I was like, Chris, like, we're all going tomorrow. Like, tomorrow we're doing the slow roll to Windsor. And we were supposed to meet, like, in London, and it's 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hour drive from where I am to Windsor. And I was like, okay, we're meeting people out in London, then we're all going to Windsor, and there was one car. And we're like, oh, okay. Like, did I just get us up at like 5:30, like 6 in the morning? Like, what is this? And so we drive to the stop just right before Windsor. We're meeting up like at this truck stop with everyone. And we pulled in, and it was just like everyone was there, like the trucks and just the rigs and the people and all the pickup trucks and whatever, just the flags. Like, that's when like Canadian flags really came out, was during the Trucker Convoy. And I was like, okay.
I got mine.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And
everyone wanted to be Canadian. Normally people want to be Irish. And normally they're like, my granddad's dad's dog was Irish. Everyone wanted to be Canadian.
Yeah, I think like even Canadians like, found flags. Like, we're like, oh my gosh, this is actually something to be proud of. So I just remember, and there was a truck, and because I do have faith, but the first truck that led the entire convoy, it said, Jesus is king. And I just thought, something is happening here. Like, this is a movement we've never seen before. And so anyways, we spent the day doing, the slow rolls in Windsor just for a few hours, had the boys in the back. They had no idea really what's going on, but I was like, you're part of like history right now. And after that, I was like, this is going to be huge. It was just, even that one day was incredible. So we downloaded this like Zello app, which was like the trucker communication, like the radios.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were communicating with each other and to the public, and you'd hear like kids call in and be like, thank you, truckers, for like standing up for me for my freedoms, or thank you, truckers, like, like just little voices. And you could hear like grown men just breaking down, like crying, like start crying, thinking of these calls. And so we listened to it all week, like me and the boys.
Don't.
I know. See, I do. And so we listened all week to these calls, and then it was like, okay, we're leaving London. The South convoy's going, and that was the first day leaving my city to join up with the convoy, and it was just overwhelming. And being able to reflect now, I realized that, conversations with people, they're like, thank you for speaking up. I can't do it because I'm not a nurse. Or thank you for doing something I can't because I'm not a. And people didn't realize, like, you don't need you don't need a title. And I think that's what the truckers did for people. Because, like,
the world was watching.
Well, and I think like, I didn't know a trucker. And if I'm being completely honest and transparent, like, I think subconsciously, or I don't know if it's subconscious, like, there's a little bit of a judgment, or, it's a trucker. Like, I don't know. And so they're just everyday people. They're just everyday working class people. They don't have a title. And I think it's like, well, if a trucker can do it, like I can stand up and say something. I don't need a title. I can do something. And
Giving people permission.
Yes.
That weren't professionals. And
Yes.
I don't know whether it was the same in Canada, but we certainly had you're not an expert. You're not a scientist. So I wonder if that gave people the perception that they couldn't because they weren't under.
I think so. I really do think there was something there. Because people would say like, oh, but you have more credibility. It's like, no, I clearly don't because I'm being discredited.
Discredited nurse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was like, no, I clearly don't have any credibility in this. But I think the truckers gave that hope of just everyday people standing up. And then I remember you making this comment to me and it stuck too. And it's the enormity of the size of the trucks, because I remember you thinking you're like, I'm just one person walking through, England, but like the size of each truck coming through and making that statement. So we left London, and it was Canada, and it was like every overpass. We just bawled the whole drive there because it was just, and then you have kids like tobogganing down like the one side. The whole overpass is just full. I remember my parents stood on one of them that we went under, and just everyone came out of all ages, all backgrounds. Like everyone just came out for this event, and I couldn't get over seeing the visual of it was the overpasses and people. And then you have the groups of people.
And when you say overpasses,
that's over the highways.
Yeah,
sorry. So standing over top of the highways. And then you get into kind of the smaller areas. And it was even still impactful. Like, these small country towns we're driving through, you'd have one or two people on a bridge. But they are out there. Like, this is wintertime. Yeah. Like we're talking like minus 20, minus 30 days. And they'd be out there for like 6-8 hours or more, just standing there with the Canadian flag, like one person, just like doing that. And then I remember this one older lady, I looked over, she's like in a snowbank on the side of the highway, just standing there waving her little flag and just thanking people, like just the dedication and the hope that it brought to people. Like it just,
it really
took
did.
It took over all of us.
Yeah, it really did. And watching it oh my God, I wanted to be part of it so much. But yeah, the world's eyes really were on Canada, and I don't think it was just. I know it wasn't just like within Canada where it did inspire people and give people hope. Like people were really looking for that hero, and I remember doing a tweet, and it was something like, normally it's like tall, dark, handsome, whereas mine's now like Canadian trucker, checkered shirt. I don't want a fireman or a policeman. I want a trucker now.
Exactly.
Although I am very happily married. But
yes, yeah.
If it wasn't, that's what I'd be looking for at that time. Didn't they make it? Like, didn't they fine people for cheering too much or being out in support or anything like that? Am I making that up in my head? I might need to fact check this. Were they making it difficult for people to show support to the truckers?
I think as time went on or later, and again, see memory, there's so much that took place. I think people got tickets, and I don't know if it was there or after, but like for honking. It was like the honking tickets.
The noise.
Yes. And trying to, dissuade people from, I think, going out. I think they tried to make a rule about the overpasses or something.
Like distractions.
Yeah, but it was like impossible the first while, and I was only planning on going for the weekend. Like, I just knew I had to be a part of it. I was like, I need to go. So got to Ottawa, and I remember it was like, turn right if you're staying the whole like weekend parked here because you're not going to get out. Or like turn left if you're parking. It's like, okay, well, we're staying in hotels, so we'll go here and walk back. And then just watching. So we just watched cars that whole weekend, just pull in.
And you were doing like lives and people were coming from all sorts of places. I think there was, I don't know whether it was one of your videos, but there was some Polish people that had brought some like Polish sausages.
Yes.
And everyone was just coming and just giving, and this real sense of community and like the joy, and people like playing hockey in the streets. And it really showed me like what the media can do, how they can take that very, very small part of the story. Like, I think there was litter. There was a lot of litter. But even the litter was like put all next to the bins and things. Like, people tried the best they could.
No, they like did an excellent job. Even then, it was like there was people out there. They bought like shovels. They literally shoveled like all the pathways, all the snowbanks. There was garbage bags like every 10 feet, and then people would come with like wheelbarrows and dump them somewhere. Like it was, they would say like it was the cleanest it has ever been. Like people that lived in Ottawa like have never seen it actually so clean, because it was just like the first like couple days until people got their bearings. Things kind of piled up around the garbage bins, but then people were very quick to figure out systems and work together. And it was like the snow was always plowed, like always shoveled. Garbage was like just like immaculate. Like you'd see a little thing on the street, you'd even pick it up. It was like we were leaving this incredibly like clean. The East versus West hockey game was the best. That was like every day at noon. And it was for the Freedom Cup. I forgot what they were calling it. And it was just amazing. And the food, like mentioned, there was one guy that came from Manitoba, and he was Freedom Bar and Grill. And he would set up around 1 or 2 in the afternoon and cook till 3 a.m. But he cooked like gourmet like food. Like he was a professional chef that came and cooked. Every day I had to see what was on the menu. It was just something extravagant and different. But there was coffee, the hot chocolate, cookies, baked goods. A couple of the Slovakians had pulled pig roast going. They had pig roast going, fire pits everywhere. And just, I've never seen so much smiles and hugs and laughter. And then, of course, the infamous now bouncy castles. And it was completely just family-friendly dance parties. I've just the whole time, and you would think, of course, there was some like drinks or whatever in the evening. And I was kind of curious. I went out some evenings. I'm like, okay, how are people going to be, now that, they had drinks in their system. And I can't believe that we were there for 33 plus days or whatever it was. And it just stayed incredibly peaceful, like every day at every opportunity, like that many people together, every background, every culture, every difference, every religion didn't matter.
It's like, amazing when you don't watch the news.
I know. And that you just like, you're just so on. Like, oh, you're a human being. You're a human being. Okay, we're here because we want like freedom of choice and to actually have differences and be respectful. And we're just here for freedom and everyone uniting under that. And, without you didn't do it this way or this way. It was just, nope, we're here. It was just incredible. I've never felt so much unity and community in my life.
We saw the 2 things. So one, I would love to have been a fly on the wall, like at the journalist meeting. Like, how can we make this look bad? Because we definitely saw, like it, like you say, in the early times, like with the rubbish stacking up, and it was like, look how disgusting they were, and I just like really like shaking the head, scratching the heads, like how can we make a spin on this? How can we like turn this into a headline? Honestly, they must have just tangled themselves up so much trying to work that out. So that was the first thing I was going to say. And then the other thing was like the drone footage of like just the enormity of it. And in London, when we had the large protests, like the drone footage, and then people would put music next to it. It's like, oh my gosh, it was just amazing. And like what you were saying, it's amazing how people can just get on when they're not told who to be mad at, when they're not told this person who stereotypically looks like this is your enemy. This is the person you need to be scared of. This is the person who's insert whatever. And that's what we had conversations as well. All these different people, different life experience, different ages, different religions, different cultures, just getting along because we all shared the same values. Maybe not the same opinions or the same, where we've come from or where we're going, but certainly the same values at that time. So that was the amazing bit. And I remember Rob sending me I can't remember now whether it was a video or whether he sent me the picture, a screenshot, of you with the police officer. And I think he's put something like, she looks like hard work, or something like that, because, or I bet she's a nightmare, because with what I'd done with the police and then seeing you with the police, it had popped up on his news feed. So when did the police start to turn? Was there always tension?
No, they were really great. Yeah, they were really good. Always a lot coming in from all over the country and province. But they were, friendly. I shouldn't say supportive. They were there. They were kind. Maybe some of them were supportive. We don't know. They wouldn't share, but they're like, but they did say this is the nicest protest we've ever been to. Everything's been great so far. Everything's been peaceful. So at the beginning, they were able to share those sentiments. It was kind of around the Emergencies Act was invoked on February 14th. So it was after that things kind of shifted, and there was like starting to be a little bit of tension, and things were kind of off. Yeah, and I was still a little bit in my naive phase or state of thinking, Canada and peaceful. And I was like, there's just too many people. Like, there's too many people. This is too peaceful. Like, kids are coming out to this. Like, they can't do anything. Like, they're not going to. And yeah, I will admit my naiveness to that. So when the police finally did come out on the 18th, I do think, though, that picture that Rob was talking about, though, there was, I should go back to the jerry cans, because that was like an infamous thing of what was happening, because they were trying to come up with all these obstacles of like, okay, you can't honk your horns. And then they found out, okay, that injunction or whatever it wasn't put in properly. So they started honking the horns again. And it was amazing, because it's like, oh, who knew like truck horns like sounded so good, right? Like, I think when knowing the context, it was like, the horns of freedom. And somehow they made tunes like 5 trucks like made like a song, and people dancing to like truck horns. But so they tried to kind of keep thinking of ways to make it more difficult for people. And one of them was you cannot supply the trucks with diesel.
Yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah, with fuel. And so it's like, okay, if you're like caught carrying like a jerry can around, like you're going to get fined, it's going to get confiscated and all this stuff.
People need that to keep their cabs warm.
Yes. Yeah, to keep the cabs warm, to sleep in, and yeah. So what happened was there was a gentleman trying to bring in some fuel, and he kind of got caught and surrounded by the police, and we all showed up, and the police ended up confiscating the jerry cans he had. But I remember standing there and like filming it all, and this officer just came like right in my face asking me to move, and it's like I'm not moving. And we had this little like confrontation, like just face to face, and that ended up being like a clip. And I think that was the shot that Rob got, because I'm like, I'm not moving, like I'm not doing anything wrong, and he ended up getting pulled off by his colleagues. But with the jerry cans, everyone was told, they're like, okay, everyone walk around with one. Yes. And I remember doing one of my lives, and I was like, something's happening over here. Turned down this street, and it was like hundreds of people assembling, and they're just handing out like jerry cans to like hundreds of people. And they're like, okay, walk down here and then go down to like Wellington was the street and turn. And so we had this like jerry can parade. It was like hundreds of people, all jerry cans walking around. So it was like became this like mockery, and it was just hilarious that we kept finding solutions by adding, I guess, like humor to it. And
yeah, and I think so. What you're saying about like how tidy you were and like tidying everything up in the snow and all that, it's almost like we have to be. I say our side for want of a better word, but it's almost like we have to be watertight. If we put like a toe, not even like a foot, like just a little toe out of line, that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas, we had the police that were our police, which were attacking peaceful protesters. Oh, that's okay, because that's not caught on the media, or it's justified somehow that in order their violence reduced other potential violence. And that really frustrates me. It really angers me. Because you have to be absolutely watertight. You can't show an ounce of frustration, like with a raised voice, because then you're aggressive.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether they've got batons, or police horses. It's just that you're aggressive. You're being aggressive. So yeah, I forgot about the cans. But yeah, I love that, being able to adapt. And mentioning the horses, so there was two things that's just sprung to mind. I don't know whether they were around the same time. The lady in the mobility scooter who got walked over by the horse, trampled on, and the police removing their IDs, like their numbers, so that they couldn't be identified as individuals. Because your police officers had like the masks and the goggles and things, didn't they? So they were quite difficult to see their facial features. Was that just one episode where it happened, where they removed their badges, or was that commonplace?
No, I think so yeah, the officers, the police came in Friday morning about 10 a.m. And I remember everyone being like, have to get out to this place, get out to this place. And so we like, formed a line, and then we see like, the almost look like military, like militant, like the rifles and the, I don't know, what is it? The LARD, like the big sound machines, almost look like tanks or something. And then they have like a big speaker, like, prepare to move, you must move, and just all the equipment. And I have never experienced this or seen this before. So we were just thinking, we're going to form a line or we're going to sit down and you're not budging us. And then there wasn't enough of us. And I just remember this one moment. This is like kind of the beginning when we're all like confused what's going on. We kind of like stepped back because this guy was trying to talk to us, this officer, and he's saying, I picked this shift to be here to make sure nothing happened. Nobody wants to arrest anybody. And he's trying to kind of manipulate us, especially now looking back. And he's like, this is just about trucks. We just have to move the trucks to, open up the city again. You guys can just get right back into protesting and do what you're here for. And kind of knowing that was not true, but not realizing we're a bit outnumbered. And I remember just kind of starting to step back, and there was a man in his truck, and he said, "Don't leave me." And I remember seeing him yelling at us like, "Don't leave me," like begging for, support and help, and thinking, these truckers just sacrifice like so much for us. And then the next thing you know, we moved back just a little bit, enough that the police kept advancing and broke his window and pulled him out. And I will never forget that image, because he's looking at us like, "Don't leave me." And we just backed up enough to almost allow that to happen. And thinking of the complete sacrifice that he had just made of being there and not moving, and then just feeling that complete letdown. But then when we moved back a little bit more, we realized we were completely surrounded. We just thought it was like this line.
Yeah.
And then there was like this one behind us, like everywhere, just completely, utterly surrounded. There was no way of getting out of that. So yeah, there was different police officers that came in from across the country. Literally, they brought in everyone from every main city across Canada. So the green suits, what people remember, because they looked very abnormal compared to everyone else. They were the ones that apparently they're riot police from Quebec, and they're the ones that didn't have the badges on. But all the other officers from other countries, they did. So, but the Quebec ones, yeah, they were the ones that looked the scariest by far. Like, I think that's what a lot of people remember: the green suits, the masks, and just, batons and
I'd forgot about the windows being smashed as well, because weren't I don't know if it's trucks, but cars were seized and they were returned with the windscreen smashed, the windows smashed, and quite a lot of damage. And then it was suggested that that's how they arrived, or that it was nothing to do with them.
Yeah. Or was police confiscation or something, so it was allowed, or something ridiculous. But yeah, a lot of damage was caused to personal vehicles. There was one, they had like, it was a family car. They had like, their kids' car seats in the back, and completely just destroyed for being parked in the wrong spot, I guess.
And it makes me think about how people didn't like when someone would say, "Oh, well, if this was 1930s Germany, you know how you'd act." I know how I'd act. I know how I'd act. I've seen it. I've lived it. And did we have the end result? No, we didn't. But was it just another brick in the path along the way? If enough people hadn't spoken and hadn't done anything, like, would it have just been total control and the passports and all of that stuff. Yes, I genuinely believe that's what would have happened. And people don't like that because, and I understand that us not going to a restaurant, you can't compare to the Holocaust. But certainly the tactics that we used with the propaganda and the fear and the aggression, you can compare, and the behaviours. And when we think about our journey and how, I remember doing a video and I was saying, like, you know, people are telling me that I don't care and that I'm selfish, and I care so much it hurts. It hurts so bad to see all of these things happening, knowing that I am one person with one voice, with limited resources, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm totally winging this.
Yeah.
But I'm really trying because I care. And then you have just, I don't even know what to say, but like, for want of a better word, I'll use idiots. We'll just go with idiots. Like, just smashing and causing this damage. And especially, like, they've got friends, they've got families who have got kids. They know, like, how much parents, you know, might be struggling or might be under pressure because they've got to get the kids to nursery, the kids to school, feed the kids, wash the kids. Like, it's stressful. And they're there just smashing, just acting like absolute hooligans. And I don't know I don't know whether it was the police or whether they just allowed it to happen. But these are the people who are telling us they care. They're telling you they care.
I know.
And they're allowed to get away with all these things. And then somehow we're the bad guys.
Yes. I know. I that has bothered me since day one of all this. Like, I don't understand. It's because, yeah, like, I care that I'm trying to tell you, like, the truth. I'm trying to explain this to you. I'm trying to help you. I want you to have, like, you know, a healthy life. That's why, you know, giving you actual things you can do to prevent or be healthy versus, you know, and seeing that. And that was when, you know, the innocence was kind of gone for me of, you know, what I thought could happen in the world in Canada, because it was that attack. And I remember even, like, and I was on the front lines for the 2 days, just face to face with these officers, and yeah, they, like, were just brutally attacking people. I remember them trying to, there's we're on this pathway, so there was, like, concrete wall with a drop and then a fence, and we're lined up on this one pathway. Other people were here, and these 3 veterans were standing, you know, with their backs to the police, trying to, like, protect us. And these older veterans, one was from France, I remember, and I don't remember where the other 2 were from. One had a cane, and then the officers just started pushing them. They're like pushing, like, the vets. And there was a whole other line of veterans prior to this that the police just advanced on. But I remember, because I was right in front of them, these officers pushing, and they just were, there was a concrete wall behind me and a couple of others, like one of those electrical boxes, whatever it was. And they're like, move. And it's like we physically can't. And this one guy just so angry and violent, just got in my face, grabbed me, had his forearm up against my neck, and just pushed me against this concrete wall and a couple of others, to the point, like, I ended up falling on the ice. And then I was like, that was the only time I really panicked, because I was just like, they're pushing, like, they're, you know, the trampling. But luckily everyone was so aware and helpful and keeping everyone safe. So I pulled me over the railings really quickly to get me back to my feet. But it was just, yeah, they took people, beating them with the end of the guns, the tear gas, the pepper spray, the rubber bullets, you know, hit people in the face, took out their live stream phones. That's what they're aiming for. And then there was a reporter from Rebel News beside me. And so somehow, I don't know if it was like a canister, like a tear gun canister or whatever it was, just hit her in the leg, and she was screaming beside me and trying to help her, and just like this kind of like bruise mark that was burning, because it was the canister from the tear gas. And she was just in so much pain, and watching people get directly sprayed that were just horrifically, like, in pain. And it just, it was a lot to witness and be there. And then they brought out the horses 2 or 3 times, and just to break up and run through the crowd and trample people. And yeah, those 2 people that did get trampled, and they were okay. There was a lot of leading information in the news about that, but they both ended up okay. But yeah, it was just horrific. I didn't realize.
Not that at the time they knew they were going to be okay.
No, did
you know,
not
you
know.
don't know what's going to happen
No.
to these people, so there wasn't that kind of concern.
Yeah, it was super traumatic to witness, especially like never seeing anything like that before and thinking, you know, this is Canada.
And like what we were saying before about people who are almost like head in sand, I don't want to think about all of this because my life isn't what I thought it was. I struggled with the police because as far as I was concerned, the police were part of the services and we all help our community in different ways. And then what I saw during the protest, that wasn't the case at all. Like the police are political pawns and they're just there for whatever the political agenda is. It doesn't matter whether it's morally and ethically the right thing to do. They're the orders that they've been given and that's what they're going to do. And if you try and question that, they will just simply laugh at you. And the amount of officers that like would laugh at me, madness. And I wonder if what you're describing there and how traumatic that was, that realization, that wake-up call, is almost what the people that we've fallen out with are trying to avoid.
Probably. But
Those feelings and emotions, not the same situation.
No. But the feelings of, you know, being naive and just having that kind of innocence broken down. And I would say, yes, they're trying to avoid that, but I think even to a greater extent. Because as much as I was naive, I had seen the images that you posted. I remember the peaceful protest that you're talking about. I had watched that. I've seen what was happening in Australia. I had seen, you know, Germany with like the water hose like spraying everyone. I've seen the images, so I knew it was possible. But I guess there was that denial that like, but not in Canada. Yeah, it's not. It won't happen here. So I think the other side is even more so protecting because I don't even know if they have the awareness, right? I don't even think it's like there's not even a denial. I don't even know if there's that awareness that they're avoiding. Mm-hmm.
So the Rebel News lady, was that the one who was with Trudeau? And I'm trying to think. She got like mousy brown hair and she was trying to ask questions and he was just totally twisting what she was said. I might have to put the video
her name's
up.
Alexa, and she, French accent.
Yes, I think it is the one.
Okay.
I'll put the link to the video that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just have a quick look, making sure that I just get everything. About people targeted for supporting the truckers as well.
Oh, yeah.
So with the
donations?
With the donations and the addresses got leaked.
Yes. So
and banks got frozen?
Yeah. So I had a couple friends, their bank accounts got frozen because they had fundraised a bunch of money. People who had donated to, I think it was the Give, Send, Go. I don't know, because it went GoFundMe, actually said, nope, this is like a corrupt, whatever was, not event, but whatever funding source, whatever the word they gave it, they said, we cannot support this. And ended up returning all the money. I don't think they were going to at first, but I think there was so much like pressure that they ended up returning all the money.
Oh, because they were going to donate it to other charities.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it had been up to like $10 million.
Yeah.
So all that was donated, and then they started up the Give, Send, Go, and same thing, like $8 million. Ended up in this. With the Give, Send, Go, it was in an American bank, and with Give, Send, Go had no control over the money. They were not going to make anything political. They were, allowing it to take place. But there was this loophole that I think it was the Ontario government or whatever made it illegal to withdraw the money. So they couldn't even take the money out. So again, there was like this $8 million there stuck in it. And I can't remember what's happened to it since. I don't know if Give, Send, Go eventually just said, okay, since the government's not going to allow this to be withdrawn, we're just going to give it back, I believe is what happened. But yes, then when the Emergency Act was invoked on the 14th, it gave, somehow opportunity or permission, whatever the right word is, to seize bank accounts. And then so they started seizing people's bank accounts that had donated to the Give Send Go, and or people who knew that had fundraised a lot that were going to hand out money to the truckers. So just again, you kind of like are aware of these things, especially when you dig down and you know it can happen. And it's like, okay, but we're at this point, like now where it actually is happening.
And I think when people support that idea, I think it is fair to say, have a think about what you feel really passionately about. And what if your bank account was frozen for supporting that? You know, football teams. What about, you know, you're there supporting Leeds United, but Manchester don't like that, so they freeze your bank account. And I know that's a very silly example, and it's not, you know, it's not political. But who's to say that we don't go down there if we don't stop it now? You know, they could make any decisions, any choices. You all have to wear the same clothes. You all have to have the same haircut. You all have to do this. And if you deviate from that, then, you know, tough luck. You can't feed yourself. So I think, yeah, anyone that kind of supports that needs to question, like, what could that mean to me? If I support this to go through, what might it mean for me? What might it mean for my children? And do I think there needs to be laws in place and things? Yes, I do. But what harm is it? What harm is it causing to have those beliefs of freedom of choice of what we do to our body? So the addresses as well. Did they release the addresses?
Oh, and they did. They did release all the names and addresses. So they leaked all that. And it was...
Putting people considering this is about keeping people safe.
Yeah.
That
and it did put people at harm because all of a sudden people, colleagues, that people like, you know, just even at cafes, found out, oh, you were a donor? Like, you donated to the truckers? Like, and then I've heard stories of people having to quit because they just got, you know, ridiculed so much that they had to quit their job. One man I know is a nurse director. He donated like $100, got terminated from his position as a director at a nursing home for donating. Like, just crazy. And I believe there's an Ottawa police officer. I just saw the news. I think I saw the story before too, that donated. So here's an Ottawa police officer donating to the truckers that they, you know, violently kicked out. So she's under investigation right now, might lose her job as well for just donating to a cause. So you're not even allowed to have differing political views anymore. And I first experienced that myself with January 6th. It's like, I'm kind of indifferent. Like, Trump, I wasn't, whatever. But if I was a big, you know, Trump supporter, what does that matter?
Oh, like, don't add that to your list.
I know.
You'll be getting stopped at the airport.
I know, that'll just be like a little sound bite. You'll just take that sound bite and then there you go, back to domestic terrorists. But I just found it like so crazy that you're just not allowed to have differing political views. And I don't think people kind of realize that because they're so entranced in like, but this is the right way and that is dangerous. So no, you're not allowed to think that because that is dangerous think. That's, you know, terrorist or anti or whatever label they've given it, that they're not even recognizing that we're not allowed to have even differing opinions or choice in democracy. So they're not even realizing, we keep using this word democracy in our countries, and they're not even realizing that that has been removed. And that's the part I find fascinating they're not seeing that it's seen as like, yeah, well, that's acceptable because that's wrong.
But it's like when people are in relationships and they say that they're happy and they're not. Like, the more you say you're happy, it doesn't make you happy in that relationship. And I've definitely noticed that where people will just kid themselves on quite a lot, just like tell themselves lies to save themselves from any discomfort. What has been your biggest learning out of doing this?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it's a big question.
What about yourself? Because not everyone has gone to the lengths that you have. So what have you learned about yourself?
So it's very fascinating. Years ago, I had this business called Sweaty Successful Moms with two other moms. And the idea was we created this program called The Meaningful More. And it was to reconnect mothers specifically who have lost themselves in parenting. And it was to reconnect to like who you actually are. And it's been fascinating because a lot of the lessons that we teach in the program is 12-week program were things that we had to constantly teach ourselves. And I remember we went to this wellness leadership academy to help us, learn how to build this business and grow. And we had to find our guru words, and it was like this word that you have to kind of like live by, and it can make you super excited, but also makes you want to vomit at the same time because it's so scary. Like that's what it's supposed to invoke in you. And I remember like they took us through this process to figure out what that word was. And at that time, and this is going back probably 5 years ago now, leader came up. And I don't think I really knew what that meant at that time. But it was the word that came, and I kept it. And so I guess this journey has shown me that I can be a leader, but what it means to be a leader, and leading by example and not just, telling what to do. And it's supporting and helping people like come along, with the journey. It's, helping your community. So it's taught me, I guess, a lot about leadership and growing into that role and being okay with making mistakes and learning from that humbly and admitting wrong and continuing to learn. So that's been kind of the biggest takeaway, is trying to be more confident in myself and remembering to remain in that humility phase, because it can kind of get lost.
I think a lot of people want the leadership role. A lot of people have this idea of what it is to be a leader. And I don't think a lot of people fully appreciate the responsibilities. I remember reading a book called Leaders Eat Last. And I think that is my leadership style. So Rob will disagree with me, but I will say I can lead or be led. But I won't be led by someone who you can't challenge. I won't be led by someone who just gives me stupid rules. I won't be led by someone who won't. When I was like practicing, I would always say, I'll never ask you to do a job that I'm not prepared to do myself. I might not have the ability to do it because I'm here for a different role, but I'll never ask you, I'd never just give you all the crappy jobs. It's only because I need to do this role, which you can't do, and that's why I'm asking you to do this. So, yeah, Rob will disagree with me, but I can be led, but it absolutely has to be by someone who is willing to do that work as well. And I think this is a different podcast, and we won't go into that conversation now, but, like when you see all the climate change stuff, when you've got people that are flying on private jets. No, I don't want that in a leader.
Yeah.
I want someone who's going to, be true to what they're saying and show me. Don't just tell me what I need to do. Show me.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think a lot of people want leadership roles, but they don't actually know what is involved. They don't see the tears and the heartache and the early mornings and the late nights and all that stuff. They think it's just bossing people around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like that. I like that. I think that's a really good learning to have, and one where you be a leader and also be compassionate with what you do, and probably don't even want to do it.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly it. I think that's why, that word, like they said, it can either excite you or, make you sick, because sometimes it's, I don't know if it's calling or just something, like everything that has happened, it's not something I'd led to do. It just kind of, I keep just day by day and doing what I think is the right thing, and it keeps taking me in this path and just continuing to learn from it. So it's been in a crazy journey. I think it's also just taught me, that resiliency, however you want to take that word, but that you can keep, I was going to use the word pivot, but I don't know, people's kind of sick of that word, but that's what it is. It's just kind of keep pivoting and finding solutions. And I'm hoping moving forward, that's, what we'll continue to do with who knows what's coming next.
So the next question is actually, what does the future look like?
Yes.
What's next for you?
I can tell you what's next for Canadian Frontline Nurses. So we've launched a new website last kind of, winter-ish. It was completed. So our idea is these nurses that are terminated or nurses that are kind of fed up with conventional medicine and the traditional nursing system, we're hoping to kind of create a new framework. And we're starting off by doing this with creating a national directory database of nurses. So the nurses join our membership. It's $100 a year. That's commitments to help with the cost behind the scenes. And with that, we promote them, help advertise, and we're building up in our kind of paid page, like the membership page, programs and different learning opportunities and different speakers, so we can start kind of challenging what we've been taught and kind of start moving forward. And then the public join at $50 for the year, and they get access to these teachings and learning and can then connect with a nurse in their province. What we're hoping to happen is we can start getting care back in the homes. So from birth to palliative and everything in between, we can start taking back our responsibility of care, that we are nurturers, that we are capable of doing this, and putting that responsibility back on the people as well. So no longer are they patients, which are victims. They are active participants in their health journey, and the nurse is there to help guide them along their way. So it is kind of, I think we have 70 nurses now that are on board for doing this, and it continues to grow. So that's what we're hoping to do with Canadian Frontline Nurses, is kind of keep growing and shifting into a new framework while we still advocate on the side. But we know the importance of creating and moving forward as well.
And where can people get more information from for that? Because we'll put the link.
Just all right on our website, CanadianFrontlineNurses.ca.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I'd like to end on is a story that you were telling me before we came here. And I think to me, it really demonstrates so I do a lot about transactional analysis, so the adult, parent, child, and how we are spoken to and treated like children. So me and my husband, we went to Spain, and the rules were we had to wear a mask. But I just can't play along. Yeah. I can't pretend. I can't join in the theatre. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. And so I took a big bottle of water, and I've got the weakest bladder ever. I can't believe I've sat down this long, actually. But I was going to sip this water all the way. So I was. And it felt like the air hostess kept on pressing please wear your mask, please wear your mask. It felt like they were pressing it more. And then, of course, when it comes to spending money, when it comes to the coffee coming around and the food coming around, all of a sudden it's fine.
Yes.
And then on the way back, I had a big bag of M&Ms. So I would be eating these M&Ms. Again, I didn't want to cause conflict. Like just leave me alone. And gosh, I felt so sick because I actually ate them. I wasn't even pretending. So it just made me think about that. So can you tell your story about how you were treated quite childlike and the consequences that happened for your actions?
It is. I agree. I can follow rules if they make sense and I understand them, but don't give me BS. And I can't do the theater. I don't do games. It's been such a joke growing up that this face, I've never been able to tell a lie like my mom instantly. So it just became there's no point in even trying. So Sarah and I were flying out to speak in Vancouver. We flew out Air Canada, and they've been really, really bad. And so on the way there, I was just trying to pull the mask down in my window and just try to be subtle and not cause anything. And she kept coming around and was like, pull up your mask, pull up your mask. Oh, the funniest thing is when I came on the plane, had the mask on, And she's like, ma'am, can you tighten the seal around your mask? And I was like, oh, you mean like yours? And she's like, yeah, like mine. I was like, your mask is cloth. It doesn't tighten. Just please think about these things. Anyway, so we pull the mask down, get in trouble, so pull it up. And then I tried to do the same thing that you did, like snack. But I almost like they had like a timeline, like a timer of like, you've been snacking too long, like pull the mask up. And, but then next thing you know, it was like full service. It was like, here's your snack, here's some coffee, here's some drinks. Okay, so that's allowed. And then, he tried to just eat it as slow as possible. Then again, it was almost like, okay, timer's up.
TikTok.
Yeah, time to put it back up. So same thing. I just kind of kept trying to pull it down and be discreet and whatever. And, but I guess they flagged me or whatever they did. So on my way home, I went to go give them my boarding pass and whatever, check in. And they're like, oh, there's something wrong with this. And they didn't seem to know, or they weren't telling me. I'm not sure. They passed on to someone else. Like, oh, we have to take it to this person. Oh, we have to take it to this person. It was just this whole thing of no one telling me what's going on, but them seeming confused. Ended up missing my flight. And then somehow they sorted it all out. So, that's what happened. Someone came and talked to me, the in charge, before getting on the flight. And I had to have a lecture about wearing masks properly. We're on that part when we were talking about it. I was like, that's what happened. They had to be disciplined. And I had to have a lecture about...
Re-educated.
Yes, about how to wear the mask properly. And then I was allowed back on the flight. Yeah.
It is madness. And I wish that we didn't have time. So much was going on. I was doing so much. Rob was trying to juggle house and work and dogs and stuff. And we moved house I wish we had done a timeline, a journal, just every day, just all these stories and just how ridiculous it all is. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Are there any questions you thought I was going to ask that I didn't?
No, I don't think so.
No?
I'm just thinking we're going to have to do this reverse somehow next time. Because there's a lot of things.
Where else should we go?
Yeah, exactly. Where else can we meet to do this? Yeah.
Should we go and get some Masaka?
I think so.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.